take a look at the current exchange rates. The United States dollar is buying at 24 kwacha, 24 ngwe, and selling at 24 kwacha, 67 ngwe. The Great British Pound is buying at 32 kwacha, 89 ngwe, and selling at 32 kwacha, 96 ngwe. The Euro is buying at 28 kwacha, 35 ngwe, and selling at 28 kwacha, 41 ngwe. The South African Rand is buying at 1 kwacha, 37 ngwe, and selling at 1 kwacha, 37 ngwe. We take a look at some of these stories that are making headlines on or in the world of business. On a local front, the cost of living has increased by 490 kwacha, 41 ngwe. The Jesuit Center of Theological Reflection, JCTR, has disclosed that the cost of living in Lusaka for a family of 5 increased by 490 kwacha, 41 ngwe in June, now standing at 11,763 kwacha. Speaking during a press briefing on Thursday, the JCTR program officer, Lukwes Samusonda, said the increase was notably driven by a significant rise in charcoal prices and other non-food components. This analysis, covering January to June 2025, underscores the urgent need for robust economic interventions to alleviate the burden of Zambian households, particularly those most vulnerable. Comparing June 2025 BNN to May 2025 in Osaka, for a family of 5, the total basket saw an increase of 490 kwacha. This was primarily driven to non-food components, which also increased. And in more stories, the World Investment Report, which analyzes macroeconomic trends and policy reforms worldwide, has placed Zambia amongst the countries that are implementing significant structural reforms with the backing of so many developments and their partners. Now, the report, which was published by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, has spotlighted Zambia as one of Africa's leading reform-driven economies, commending its studies in fiscal consolidation, debt restructuring, and inflation control. In a statement issued by the Ministry of Finance and National Planning, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says this year's report explored how international investments can help bridge the digital divide. The new released World Investment Report, Investments in the Digital Economy, was published by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. We take a look at some international stories and we see what the tariffs have really done to the U.S. economy. Now, soon after Donald Trump returned to the White House in January, he began raising tariffs, brushing off warnings from economists and businesses about the risk of economic damage. Now, this has actually had an effect on the economy of the United States. How so? He started with Mexico, Canada, and China, then targeted steel, aluminium, and cars, and finally in April, on what was called Liberation Day, unleashed a blitz of new taxes on goods from countries around the world. The plan hit trade and rallied some of the financial markets, but as worries mounted, Trump quickly suspended his most aggressive plans to allow a 90-day of talks. As of 9th July deadline approaches and the president crafts his approach, he will have an eye on the U.S. economy. So what does this impact really mean, or where will it begin? The stock market has rebounded. Trump's plans included tariffs of 20% on goods from the European Union, punishing tariffs on the items of China, and 145 and 46% levy on imports from Vietnam. Through the Wednesday, he announced that a deal that will see the U.S. change its tariffs to 20% on Vietnam. The U.S. stock market suffered the most immediate hit, starting with a slide in February and finally tackling and easing April after Trump revealed that a full scope of his plans on so-called Liberation Day, which at the end of the day didn't work as he had expected. Now, the S&P 500, which tracks 500 of the biggest companies in the U.S., dropped about 12% over the course of the week. But shares bounced back after Trump rolled back to his plans, abandoning steep tariffs in favor of more easily swallowed 10% rate instead. Now, the S&P 500 index is about 6% of the year, and in the UK, Europe shares have also rebounded, and it's all going back to Donald Trump. So what's the solution? Will it keep going down or going up, and not in favor of the U.S.? We'll find out after the 9th of July if these tariffs will still be imposed, or maybe there will still be a talk on how they can best see how these tariffs will, well, be favorable on both parties. These are some of the stories that we had for you on the Business Snapshot. As we give you more later on at 13:30, we'll be having the press review. Good afternoon.
The Business Snapshot on 88.5 Sun FM.